Jax had never imagined he would leave Earth, let alone wake up one day in a world so alien, where the sky was deep purple, and twin silver moons cast their light over glowing cities nestled within forests of otherworldly trees. Yet now, every morning he found himself awakening in a round chamber scented with exotic herbs, beside a woman who did not belong to humanity's world, Aria, his wife, the one who had swept him into the dizzying vortex of destiny and longing. On Narvia, time itself seemed to slow, the rhythm of life as unfamiliar as his own body, always taut, always bracing itself for strange neurological storms. His first days on this planet, everything was overwhelmingly new. But after only a few nights, Jax realized the strangeness wasn't just in the scenery or daily routine, but in Aria herself. Her gentle smile, her pale blue skin that glimmered softly in the dark, the eyes that always concealed some secret. There were nights when she would hold him tightly, whispering in a language made of laughter and breath, as if trying to shield him from some invisible fear. He used to think he understood Aria, until he began to experience things he couldn't explain, surges of emotion that struck without warning, a stirring in his body that wasn't only his own, but seemed to radiate from somewhere outside himself. Sometimes, while he sat by the window working, Aria's finger would brush lightly across his wrist. Just a gentle touch, but his entire body would suddenly flare with a subtle fever, as if an electric current had raced through every cell. Occasionally, he would hear faint, indistinct whispers in his mind, mingling with laughter and rapid breaths, forcing him to stop and question what was real and what was dream. Once in the midst of passionate lovemaking with Aria, Jax felt as though another gaze was fixed upon him, cold yet burning, full of desire yet perfectly restrained. When he asked Aria, she only smiled, telling him it was the natural resonance of Syrian bonding, something only those truly in harmony could ever sense. Still, Jax felt as if he were wandering into a maze whose exit had yet to appear. Tonight was the same. Jax rolled over, lying still, listening to the gentle wind brushing against the curved glass of their bedroom. Outside, the luminous forest shone silver beneath the twin moons. His body felt flushed. A strange thirst awakened deep within his chest. He slipped out of bed as quietly as possible, leaving Aria sleeping peacefully, her silken hair draped across her slender shoulder, her delicate face serene as a sculpture of some forgotten goddess. The hallway to the kitchen was lit with a gentle greenish glow, soft bioluminescent light that rendered everything dreamlike, surreal. Jax walked, each step making him feel as if he were drifting through a dream, the cool of Narvian stone beneath his feet mingling with the slow-burning heat across his skin. He stood still, pouring himself a glass of water from the censer tap. Suddenly, in front of the wide glass door, a figure appeared. It was a silhouette so familiar that Jax's heart skipped a beat. Slim shoulders, a straight back, long silvery hair cascading in waves. For a fleeting moment, he thought he was dreaming or had wandered into a fragment of memory. But the figure turned, and the brilliant blue eyes of Narvia locked onto his, and Jax knew instantly, this could not be Aria. "You can't sleep." The voice was as soft as breath carrying through the quiet of the night. Jax jerked, almost dropping his glass. "Aria." The stranger's smile was gentle yet edged with something ironic, a softness that somehow cut. "No. I'm Lyen." Jax froze, his entire body going rigid. No one had ever told him Aria had a twin. No one had ever explained why, whenever he was with Aria, he always felt as if he were being seen through another's eyes. Lyen approached, her movements so light she almost didn't touch the ground. With every step, she radiated an energy that was both alluring and dangerous. When she stood beside him, Lyen lifted her hand, sipping the water before setting the glass down on the counter. The moonlight sketched delicate and unfamiliar lines across her face, so astonishingly like Aria, yet entirely different, rebellious, instinctual, mesmerizing. "You're wondering why I look exactly like Aria, aren't you?" Lyen whispered, her voice breaking Jack's stunned trance. "You're twins." "Syrians are not merely twins. We're born at the same instant, sharing a single stream of memory. When one connects, the other feels everything: heartbeats, pain, even the subtlest pulses of pleasure." Lyen bowed her head, silver hair spilling over her chest, every strand glinting in the moonlight. Jack swallowed, feeling sweat slick on his palms. I sense that. Sometimes I feel someone else in my head when I'm with Aria. There are moments when I feel like I'm in two bodies at once." Lyen smiled, a mixture of pride and knowing. "You're not mistaken. The first night you were with Aria, I felt it all. Every tremor, every longing, every climax. I lived through it simultaneously with my sister. That's the greatest secret of Syrian bonding." The air thickened. Jax felt himself being pulled into a cyclone of emotions, astonished, fascinated, and suddenly, impossibly aroused. It was as if every boundary of privacy had been erased, and what he thought was shared by two was actually entwined among three. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind him, familiar, almost reassuring. Aria appeared, draped in a gown thin as mist, her gaze not angry but peaceful, tinged with exhaustion. She moved to stand between Jax and Lyen, the atmosphere tightening until even the lightest touch could ignite all the hidden feelings. "I'm sorry for hiding this," Aria whispered, placing her hand gently on Jax's chest. "We Syrians aren't like humans. When you chose me, you also chose Lyen. Our bond can't be split." Jax glanced at Lyen. Her eyes now held not only challenge but a raw vulnerability, as if she too trembled at this revelation. "I was never asked," Jax's voice broke. "I didn't know I belonged to two." Aria squeezed his hand, a subtle current tingling through his nerves. "We never asked one another either. For Syrians, the connection is natural. Body, mind, and soul, they all merge as one." Lyen stepped closer, now only a breath away. "I know you feel guilty, but I also know you're curious, craving to explore this, even if your own instincts haven't caught up yet." Aria made no move to stop Lyen, nor did she withdraw. She simply stood there, her gaze gentle but unyielding. "If you wish, let us guide you deeper into Syrian bonding. Let you feel something no earthling has ever known." Jax felt entranced. He reached out, brushing Lyen's hand, a jolt sparking up his spine like a sudden current. In that moment, he knew with clarity. He was standing on a threshold with no return, where a single choice could change everything forever. The bedroom seemed transformed as the three of them entered. The biolights dimmed, leaving only violet twilight mingled with moonshadow, washing over Aria and Lyen's skin in gentle, shifting waves. Aria sat at the bed's edge, pulling Jax close, her fingers slipping through his hair, her breath fragrant with strange flowers. Lyen stood behind Jax, slim arms wrapping around his waist, her body pressing against his back, her skin cool yet burning underneath. Jax shivered, feeling two heartbeats at once, one fast, one slow, both merging into the flow of his own blood. The sense of the twins swirled, intoxicating, more powerful than any pheromone Earth had ever known. Aria drew him down onto the bed, settling beside him, her hand gliding down his back. "Are you afraid?" she asked, her voice full of anticipation and challenge. Jax said nothing, but his gaze told the truth. A desire burning, a curiosity impossible to resist. Lyen leaned in, her lips gliding over his ear, warm breath pouring into every cell. "Let us both feel you," she murmured. In that instant, every vestige of guilt dissolved. Jax felt Aria's lips brush his chest, Lyen's hand gliding along his spine, her fingers tracing his skin as if mapping unexplored territory. Slowly, Aria slipped out of her gossamer gown, her body glowing with Syrian light, misty and ethereal. Lyen followed, her form undulating in moonlight, every curve etched in shadow. When the twins touched him together, Jax realized his entire nervous system was ablaze, sensitive to the very pores of his skin. Aria on his left, Lyen on his right, both leaned in, their lips pressing softly across his body. Their movements were perfectly in sync, like twin moons pulling the tide of his senses ever higher. When Aria kissed his chest, Lyen's lips found his lower belly. As Lyen's hands caressed his inner thigh, Aria's fingers stroked his arms, her lips trailing from his neck to his shoulder. Jax gasped, his body trembling as pleasure flooded him in relentless waves. Each time he moaned, both twins responded with their own sharp breaths, as if three bodies now shared a single current of sensation. He could no longer distinguish between Aria's touch and Lyen's mouth. All he knew was that every feeling was more intense than anything he'd ever experienced. There was no hurry. Aria and Lyen savored every tiny response, patiently guiding Jax to new and dizzying heights. Sometimes, Aria pressed her forehead to his, her eyes deep as oceans, pulling him into memories vast and liquid. "Feel this," she whispered. "Let Lyen and I take you to the very heart of Syrian bonding." Lyen smiled, her arms tightening around his waist, her body pressed close, both of them trembling in synchrony. Waves of pleasure broke over and over, layering, gentle yet overwhelming, sweeping away every last doubt and fear. In that delirious haze, Jax felt himself dissolve into them. He heard both heartbeats, felt every internal ripple, as if all three nervous systems had fused into a single network, pleasure traveling from one to another and looping back. Aria's mouth seared his neck, while Lyen drew close, her eyes bright in the dark, whispering, "We need you, Jax, both of us." At the crest of sensation, Jax's senses shattered. He felt two soft hands gripping him tight, heard fragmented cries, heavy breaths, and the mingled moans of all three woven into a wild music without words. When it was over, he lay still between their gentle bodies, their mingled fragrance dizzying him to his core. Aria held him from the left, her arms protective, while Lyen rested her head on his right, eyes closed, lips still trembling. "You've made your choice," Aria murmured, "and now nothing can be undone." Jax closed his eyes, surrendering to the lingering pleasure, his palms still warm from holding the twins. A vague thought drifted through him, that from now on his life had split onto a new path, where all the old rules no longer mattered. Beyond the window, Narvia's moons drifted quietly, casting the entwined shapes of three bodies, a primordial emblem of union, of secrets only those who dared to cross boundaries could ever taste. Yet beneath that peace, a ripple of danger began to spread, as Narvia's security system registered an anomalous bonding among three individuals. Somewhere, biosensors had already flagged the illegal event, alerting the Syrian High Council. Tomorrow, Jax, Aria, and Lyen would face even greater challenges, not just from society, but from their own instincts and the choices they had made. Jax had no idea how long he had slept. When he awoke, the greenish light of Narvia's dawn seeped in through the bio-curtains, casting over a room still thick with the scent of flesh and Syrian pheromones. Two soft bodies pressed against him, their skin smooth as silk, still carrying the lingering traces of last night's ecstasy. The air was dense with warmth, emotion, and pleasure that seemed etched into every nerve. When Jax moved, Aria shifted, her hair falling messily across his face, blue eyes opening deep and gentle. Lyen too slowly awakened, stretching lazily, her arm winding across his chest, pulling him close, their bare bodies blending together as if secrecy no longer existed. Not a word was spoken. Every feeling, every desire seemed to pass through breaths, glances, the faint squeeze of hands beneath the light blanket. Jax lay motionless between them, afraid to move lest he shatter the fragile peace they had just created. But deep within, he knew nothing would ever be simple again. Last night was not just a sharing of bodies. It was a merging of souls, an indelible imprint between three people, where the boundaries between instinct and reason had been bent forever. A soft chime rang from the biosensor alarm in the ceiling, snapping Jax from his dreamy thoughts. Aria's eyes flickered with a hint of alarm, while Lyen sighed, rolling over to rest her chin on his chest, her eyes twinkling with mischief but tinged with worry. "What's wrong?" Jax whispered. Aria didn't answer immediately. She looked at Lyen, then at Jax, her hand tightening on his shoulder. "I think we've been discovered," she murmured, her voice carrying a tremor of fear. Jax shuddered. "You mean our bonding?" Lyen nodded, a half-smile on her lips but her gaze alert. Whenever Syrian bonding exceeds regulation levels, the central sensor system sends a warning to the High Council. They do not accept a three-person bond, especially with a human involved. Jax swallowed, the thought of some unseen force monitoring every breath, every intimate moment sending a chill through him. "What do we do now?" Aria stroked his hair, offering a gentle smile, but in her eyes burned a determination he had never seen before. "First, stay calm. I won't let anyone tear us apart, not even the council." Breakfast passed in a tense, uneasy silence. Jax sat at the table, eating while observing the sisters. Aria remained tender, carefully serving him, but every time their eyes met, both seemed to share a wordless dread. Lyen tried to keep the mood light with playful banter, teasing glances, but Jax could sense that deep down, she too was preparing for something serious. Whenever Aria's hand brushed past, Jax felt a tingle of electricity race along his skin. They didn't need words anymore. Since last night, a look or a touch was all it took for all three to understand what the others were thinking. This was a harmony that transcended all boundaries of Syrian bonding, sweet but dangerous. Suddenly the doorbell rang, shattering the fragile calm. All three froze. Aria signaled with her eyes. Lyen instantly slipped away into the other room. Aria gripped Jax's hand, giving him a look full of trust, and quietly whispered, "Stay calm. Let me handle this." The door opened to reveal two Syrian security officers in silver uniforms. They were tall, with the characteristic greenish skin, and their eyes were cold, emotionless. One spoke, his voice deep. "We're here to check the bonding index in this sector. The central system has recorded irregular signals from your residence." Aria smiled, so serene that Jax himself felt reassured. "Just a technical glitch. I was ill yesterday and used a personal medical device. It may have triggered a false signal." The officer glanced at Jax, then scanned the room. "The Earthling resident is still here, correct?" Jax nodded, trying to appear natural though his heart was pounding. "I just arrived on Narvia a few weeks ago, still getting used to things. If you need to check, I'll cooperate." The officers silently swept the room with handheld scanners. Blue lights scanned every wall, probing into every corner. Jax held his breath, carefully avoiding looking toward Lyen's room. Aria placed her hand on his back, sending him an odd calm. The Syrian bond was more than pleasure. It was a connection so powerful that any emotion, any feeling would instantly ripple through them all. The inspection ended quickly. Before leaving, one officer said quietly, "If the bonding index remains irregular, we'll have to report to the council. Please cooperate and observe the rules." As the door closed, Jax exhaled in relief. Aria pulled him into an embrace, whispering into his ear, "From now on, every move we make is being watched. Don't let anything slip." Lyen reappeared, giving them a mischievous glance and a dry laugh. How ridiculous. The council thinks bonding is just a technical issue. They'll never understand what this truly is. She slid close to Jax, her hand trailing across his shoulder, eyes burning with dangerous intensity. "If we're already outlaws, why not live for real just once?" Aria frowned, but her gaze had changed too, deeper, brighter. Jax felt two opposing energies, one warm and protective, the other wild and fierce, rising in him at once. And both were his, utterly, inescapably. Together they climbed to the research lab on the top floor, where Aria worked with cutting-edge Syrian biotech. The room was soundproof, shielded with sensor-resistant material, the only place on Narvia where bonding signals couldn't be detected from outside. Aria locked the door, turning to Jax and Lyen. "We must decide. To continue bonding is to fight the system. If we stop, you'll have to leave Narvia or spend the rest of your life with an unfulfilled craving." Jax looked at the sisters, his heart surging with a storm. He didn't want to lose either, nor to hurt them. But the truth was, after experiencing Syrian bonding, he could never go back to being ordinary. That hunger had become a part of him, more powerful than the urge to survive. Lyen leaned in, her lips grazing his ear. "If you had to choose, would you pick me or Aria?" Jax trembled, glancing desperately at Aria. She smiled gently, a touch of sadness in her eyes. "No one can separate us. If one of us suffers, the other can't be happy either." In that instant, Jax knew his answer. "I choose neither, I need both of you." Lyen hugged his waist tightly, her eyes ablaze with hunger. Aria came up behind, hands sliding along his body, slow and sure as if claiming him. The fusion of their emotions made Jax explode. Instinct, desire, love, and a terror of an uncertain future. The air grew thick with urgent breath, the scent of skin, the surge of Syrian energy. Jax felt himself drawn into a vortex with no escape, where every touch was a test, every kiss a rebellion against the old rules. Lyen pushed him gently onto the biosilk research table, her body covering his, every movement both tender and forceful. Aria joined, fingers threading into his hair, her kiss deep, pulling a wave of pleasure through every inch of Jax. Two energies, one burning and primal, one soft and soothing, both leaving him trembling, utterly beyond control. This time, pleasure wasn't a secret. It exploded, blended, expanded, a phenomenon only Syrians could comprehend. When two twins bond with the same partner, every sensation is doubled, shared, amplified into a powerful biological wave never seen before on Narvia. Every moan, every breath echoed and intertwined, not only in the room but in their minds. Jax felt every move Aria made, every shiver of Lyen, as if his nerves had merged into the Syrian network. He was no longer just himself. He had become a vital part of the sisters' perfect harmony. Aria whispered into his ear, her voice ragged with passion. "Don't be afraid, let instinct lead. We were born to merge, nothing can separate us." Lyen kissed down his jaw, eyes glimmering, lips igniting every inch of skin. Whenever Jax caressed Aria, Lyen shivered, and vice versa. Every motion, every feeling resonated through the bond, as if the twins were instruments tuned to the same frequency. Touch one, and all would vibrate. At the peak, all three became one in a cyclone of emotion, body and soul. Pleasure flooded them, circling and amplifying, turning into a biological energy wave so powerful that the lights seemed to pulse in time with their hearts. Labored breaths, cries, names called out like some ancient ritual, breaking through every barrier, every rule of Syrian society. After the eruption, Jax lay motionless, chest heaving from exhaustion. Aria curled into his left side, clutching his hand as if she might lose him. Lyen snuggled on the right, her breath still trembling, eyes brimming with both fulfillment and longing. The three embraced, sweat and scent mingling, a sensation of safety and peril interwoven until it almost suffocated. But peace never lasted long. Suddenly, the research room's alarm lights turned red. A cold voice blared over the intercom. "This is the biocontrol squad. Stay where you are. This sector is now under quarantine." Aria shot up, eyes icy. Lyen grabbed Jax's hand, whispering with a shiver, "They're here. We have to choose fight or be torn apart forever." Jax felt the sisters' fear ripple through the bond, but beneath it was a resolve nothing could break. He stood, gripping both their hands, looking Aria and Lyen in the eye. "We're done running. If we have to fight, we fight together." The door was unlocked remotely, cold white light flooding in. 5 Syrian biocontrollers in silver uniforms entered, stun guns and sensors at the ready. Leading them was a female officer, gaze like ice, silver blue hair tied high, the insignia of the High Council on her shoulder. "Jax, Aria, Lyen, you have violated Level 5 Syrian bonding regulations. Cooperate for examination and judgment." Aria stood in front of Jax and Lyen, voice calm but unwavering. "We're not criminals. We're only following our instincts and our hearts." The officer sneered. "Instinct is not allowed to override law." Jax felt adrenaline flood his veins. He squeezed Aria and Lyen's hands, then stepped forward to face the squad. "If you want to tear us apart, prepare for the consequences. I will not leave them, no matter the price." In that moment, the Syrian bond flared more powerfully than ever. The three seemed to become a single entity, biological energy waves bursting out across the room, causing devices to flicker, lights to stutter. The controllers recoiled, frightened by what they'd never seen. The officer shouted, "We can't control this bonding, maximum alert." But as they tried to approach, a surge of energy erupted from Aria and Lyen, enveloping Jax, forming a protective field. The three clung together, closed their eyes, letting the surging energy lead, letting Syrian bonding show the way. For a moment, Jax felt himself transcend every boundary: body, soul, society, law. There was only love, hunger, instinct, and a fierce conviction they would overcome everything. When it all subsided, the research room was bathed in gentle green light. The control squad had been forced back, the alarms silenced. Jax, Aria, and Lyen clung to each other, their breaths as one, heartbeats in harmony, as if they had just crossed a threshold into a new stage of Syrian evolution. Outside, sirens still blared, but within that room, a silent revolution had already begun. The air in the research chamber was still thick with ozone from overloaded equipment, laced with the lingering heat of bare skin after an unprecedented bonding. Jax gasped for breath, every nerve ending still resonating with the wavelengths of Aria and Lyen. The three held each other among the scattered wreckage of blinking monitors and extinguished alarm lights, all too aware that the storm outside was only just beginning. There was no time for reflection. Just minutes later, the intercom blared with a sharp Syrian warning. All research sector is now locked down. All residents must report for inspection. Any abnormal bonding will be documented and punished without mercy. Aria pulled Lyen and Jax to their feet, swiftly checking the security system. "We have to leave now, or we'll be separated forever," she whispered, her eyes blazing with desperate determination. Lyen threw on a biogown, lips still trembling with the aftershocks but her hand clinging tightly to Jax's, unwilling to let go. "I'm not afraid," she murmured, pressing her face into his chest. "As long as I'm with both of you, even if it's only for one more night." Jax looked at them both, heart torn between longing, the urge to protect, and an invisible terror that any moment could be their last together. They slipped through side corridors, weaving through shadows to evade the sensors. Each time Jax sensed Aria shudder with anxiety, a pang stabbed his chest, only for Lyen to gently squeeze his arm, as if an invisible thread linked all three hearts into one web of emotion: worry, hope, desire, and defiance. Outside, the sky above Narvia had turned a deep violet, the twin moons rising like watchful eyes. At the edge of the district, Aria led them to a secret chamber only accessible by twin biometric scan. Inside, all signals were completely blocked. The space was small but soaked in a familiar, intoxicating scent. "This was where our mother used to hide us from bonding inspections when we were young," Aria recalled, her gaze soft with nostalgia. "Now, it's the only place left the council can't touch our memories." Once the door shut, the atmosphere thickened again, heavy with uncertainty, but suddenly blazing with primal heat. Lyen sat close beside Jax, head resting on his shoulder, while Aria curled around his back, arms possessively encircling his waist as if to stake her claim against the dangers beyond. "Tomorrow we might be captured or split apart forever," Lyen whispered, her lips brushing his neck. "But tonight, I just want to live by my instincts." Jax felt every breath, every tremor from the sisters. Now it wasn't only about pleasure but a piercing ache of longing, as if just touching them risked losing them forever. He pulled them both tightly to him, their kisses long and searing. Aria slowly slipped his shirt from his shoulders, her hand gliding down his spine, patient yet fierce. Lyen pressed in, stripping away the last barriers, so skin met skin, bare, open, unafraid. The three slid down together onto a soft mattress in the corner, the outside world vanishing until only gasping breaths, whispered endearments, and the fear of loss transformed into an inferno of instinct. Jax lost himself between their bodies, so alike yet so different. Aria was gentle, enveloping, her gaze overflowing with tenderness, lips gliding across his skin as if sharing all the words she'd never spoken. Lyen was wild, daring, her hands bold and unrestrained, exploring every centimeter of him with no hesitation. Each moment of contact was a wave, surging from one to the other and back to Jax again. When Aria moaned in pleasure, Lyen bit gently at his shoulder. Both sisters shuddered in synchrony. Jax realized that every nerve, every hunger had truly merged as one. Syrian bonding was no longer theory or legend. It was a living force, a fire that burned down every barrier, even the line between life and death. In the height of pleasure, Jax heard both sisters sob in rapture, felt electric currents shudder down his spine, the sensation as if all three souls were mixing, reversing, exchanging every heartbeat, every second. They were in no hurry, each gesture a farewell, an attempt to etch themselves into each other's bones. Aria's lips paused at his chest, whispering, "If you die for this love, I'll go with you." Lyen drew him tight, biting his lip, eyes brimming. "If I can't live with you, I'd rather dissolve into this bond forever." At the pinnacle, all three fused into one being, a surge of energy so fierce the chamber's protective shell vibrated. Floor sensors registered a biological anomaly, quietly triggering alerts throughout the system. But inside, Jax could only hold them both, surrendering to a tide of ecstasy and tears, fear and mad hope. When everything quieted, the three lay still in the dim glow. Aria pressed her face to Jax's chest, her shoulders trembling. Lyen wrapped her arm around his back, her hair damp with tears but her mouth curled in contentment. Jax gently stroked their hair, whispering as if making a vow, "No matter what happens, no one will ever split us apart. Not the council, not even the world itself." The short night passed. The purple dawn of Narvia signaled a new day. They prepared in silence. Bio-clothes, signal jammers, a few essentials, and at last, an emergency message sent to a secret friend of Aria's beyond the residential zone. The alarm bells sounded more urgently. The Syrian control team had pinpointed the hidden room. Aria pulled Jax and Lyen into the corner, hugging both and sharing a brief but fierce parting kiss. Then together, they dove through the secret floor hatch, following an old conduit out toward the glowing eastern woods. Pursuers closed in, relentless. Every security camera, every sensor swept for the three bonding signals now far beyond safe limits. As they reached the woods, a shaft of silver light from a patrol ship caught them, a metallic voice echoing from the speakers. "Jax Carter, Aria, Lyen, surrender immediately. You are classified as a red-level biohazard." Jax gripped both their hands, plunging into the glowing forest, ignoring every danger. Aria activated the jammer, shielding them for now. They gasped for breath, sweat pouring down, but their eyes burned with pride. They had chosen instinct and love, chosen to fight for the right to bond freely, to live true to their feelings. They burrowed deeper, where the twin moons only glimmered faintly through the leaves. In the darkness, Jax pulled the sisters close, the three settling to rest, silently exchanging touches and glances, drawing strength for a flight without end in sight. "We might be caught or destroyed," Aria murmured, voice low, "but I don't regret it. I've learned what it means to live fully by my instincts, by my love." Lyen brushed her lips against his ear, whispering, "Whatever happens, remember, our bonding can never be erased." Jax nodded, feeling a new strength growing within him, a strength only born when a human pushes to the limits of love and the will to survive. He wrapped them in his arms, letting their synchronized heartbeats carry a sense of safety through the bond, sweeping away the last shreds of fear. Beyond, the Syrian Council called an emergency session. "This is an unprecedented, anomalous bond. If uncontrolled, it will spread, overturning our entire biology and society." But deep in the forests of Narvia, something new had been born. Love, instinct, connection that defied every limit, becoming hope for an evolution no one had foreseen. As the first rays of dawn pierced the canopy, Jax, Aria, and Lyen held hands, ready to face whatever trials lay ahead. For now, they were no longer three separate beings, but a single complete entity, inseparable by anything. At dawn, Narvia's forest looked impossibly surreal. Purple mist floated above luminous leaves. The world seemed to drift in a dream, every blade and root breathing in time with the living earth. But for Jax, Aria, and Lyen, this beauty was both refuge and prison. Every rustle in the undergrowth, every shaft of light from above could be a biosensor or the tracking beam of a Syrian Council hunting party. The three hid within a moss-covered hollow, cold air seeping through their biosuits, but none of them felt fear. They felt only each other. The rare moments of peace, when there was no need to flee, became the crucible for a bond that grew deeper, more intense, until Jax could barely recall what it meant to be alone. Aria nestled close, her skin softly aglow in the mist, each breath syncing with Jax's heartbeat. Lyen curled on the other side, her small hand slipping under his shirt to seek warmth and comfort, but also returning a gentle, indescribable current. "We can even feel your dreams," Lyen whispered, cheek pressed to Jax's neck, a mischievous glint in her voice. "Last night you dreamed of the sea, didn't you?" Jax chuckled softly. "I dreamed I was sinking into the water, but I wasn't afraid. because I knew you both were there, holding me so I wouldn't drift away." They laughed together, those tiny moments suddenly precious as gold. The harmony between them grew so strong that Jax could sense even the faintest emotional tremor from either sister. When Aria grew anxious, his own heart would stutter. When Lyen was filled with longing, heat surged through his blood. And in return, a single squeeze of Jax's hand would make one or both sisters shiver, as if a living current flowed endlessly among the three. They stayed hidden until nearly midday, the Narvian sun now high, silver light flooding through the canopy. Suddenly, a distant, unfamiliar noise broke the stillness, patrol engines, then the heavy stamp of boots over the mossy ground. Aria pressed her ear to the earth, holding her breath. "They're sweeping every meter of the forest," she murmured. "If we don't leave soon, we'll be trapped." Lyen clung to Jax, her eyes sharp with primal caution. "There's only one way, the underground tunnels of the giant forest ants. But it's dangerous, full of bioacid, only Syrians can survive it." Jax didn't hesitate. "Better that than waiting to be caught. If you're both with me, I'm not afraid." They crept to the base of an ancient tree, where secret ant tunnels twisted in a living labyrinth. Aria passed her hand over the roots, triggering a faint bio-signal that opened a pitch-black burrow. Underground, the air was humid, tinged with acid and alien plant aromas, but instantly they felt safer. Above them, the machine's searching beams were blocked. Enveloped in darkness, for Syrians this was ancestral memory territory. Aria led Jax forward, Lyen at his back. The tunnel was so narrow they had to press their bodies together at every step, the scent of skin and Syrian pheromones weaving into every nerve. At a rest stop in the labyrinth, Lyen pressed into Jax, her cold fingers slipping under his shirt, tracing fire along his skin. Aria pressed close behind, kissing his neck, sending waves of pleasure that were both soothing and urgent. "If this is the last time," Lyen murmured, "I want to feel you deeper than ever before." No instinct was denied, no reason to hide or restrain themselves. There, together in the cold, damp dark, they surrendered to each other without fear. Each touch was a spark that tore open fear, turning exhaustion and dread into detonations of pleasure through every tangled nerve. Aria caressed Jax's arm, lips seeking lips, chest pressed to his back, whispering words only Syrians could truly understand. Yet Jax heard them clear in his mind, as if a direct signal was sent to his pleasure center. Lyen, bolder, kissed down his collarbone, gripping his waist to pull him closer, fanning the heat of all three to a fever pitch. Here, underground, every boundary between them was gone. They became one, quiet but fierce, like a primordial ritual, every breath, every moan, every shudder echoing off the chamber walls, wild and unrestrained. When the trembling finally faded, they still clung together, sweat mingled, hearts beating in unison. Jax felt it clearly. The bond had reached a new level, not just sharing pleasure, but passing thoughts, images, memories from one to another. For an instant, he saw Aria's childhood racing over Narvian meadows, or Lyen's wild dreams of an alien ocean. They rested, gathered their strength, then crawled deeper. Suddenly, Aria's biosensor flashed bright red. Lyen scowled, squeezing Jax's shoulder. "They've found us. Syrian gene sensors can't be fooled forever." Above, the searchers began drilling into the tunnels. The three had to turn into a side passage, ending up in a chamber Aria said was once the cradle of Syrian bonding, a sanctum where ancestors performed their unity rites when cast out by society. The space was both cold and sacred. Ancient symbols glowed faintly on the walls, telling the legend of twin pairs who surpassed all limits, becoming legends, hunted as outlaws but planting the seeds of later evolution. Aria knelt, laying her hand on an old icon, beckoning Jax and Lyen to join in a ritual renewal. "If today is the last," she whispered, "let history know our love and bond was never a sin, but a new power of evolution." They joined hands, eyes closed. The bond's energy surged again, stronger than ever. Three bodies vibrating in unison, memories, emotions, pain, longing, instinct all swirling together, flaring outward in a massive biosignal. At that moment, across Narvia, every biodevice flickered with interference. Other Syrian twins felt the strange wave, awakening to forbidden cravings, long-dormant instincts of freedom and revolt stirring to life. Jax opened his eyes first, feeling as if he'd died and been reborn. Aria and Lyen beside him glowed with new vitality, their eyes blazing like green fire, daring the world to defy them. Above ground, the Syrian Council sensed something beyond control. Monitors went wild, security posts reporting hundreds of bonding spikes at once. No one knew why. The lead female officer was shocked, calling for an all-out hunt for Jax, Aria, and Lyen, but the patrols were thrown into chaos by the spreading effect. Some young Syrians, feeling the bond's wave, began to rebel, demanding the right to connect freely, refusing to obey old, rigid laws. Deep underground, the fugitives still gripped each other's hands. Lyen looked at Jax, tears in her eyes but face radiant. "I feel new life awakening everywhere." "You planted the seeds of change, Jax, not just for us but for all of Narvia." Jax stroked their hair, smiling gently. "We're not fugitives anymore. Now we're the ones blazing a path." Aria whispered, "Whatever tomorrow brings, I want to live and love without regrets." And so, deep in Narvia's warm, shadowy earth, with the echoes of legend and the pulse of a new energy, they once again became one, not only from desire, but from the certainty that love, instinct, and real evolution only come to those brave enough to shatter all limits. The echoes of their bonding ritual spread further than any of the three could have imagined. When Jax awoke, the intoxicating fog of pleasure was replaced by a strange buoyancy, as if his will and emotions were merging with hundreds, thousands of currents flowing through Narvia itself. Every heartbeat, every deep breath, every desire felt magnified by countless conduits of sensation. And at the heart of that great wave there they were, the three of them. In the moist, dim darkness, Aria sat close, her eyes deep, laced with fear. Lyen hugged him from behind, silvery hair falling across his chest, her hand caressing his skin as if trying to hold onto the last fragments of peace before the coming storm. "Something's changed," Aria whispered. "I can feel it so clearly. The other twins out there, they're not afraid anymore. The urge to connect is surging." Jax squeezed her hand gently, feeling a strange pulse vibrate through his fingers. "We're the cause, aren't we?" Lyen smiled, her eyes glimmering, filled with pride and anxiety. "Not just you. We unlocked something together, something generations of Syrians have feared, have tried to bury. There's no going back now." On the surface of Narvia, nothing was the same. Along the glowing avenues, crowds gathered. Twin pairs and young couples boldly walked the streets, turning challenging eyes to the council. The bonding alert system was paralyzed by signals far beyond capacity. For the first time in history, Syrian authorities had lost control over their species' most primal instinct. Heavy footsteps echoed through the earthen maze where Jax, Aria, and Lyen were hiding. With each passing second, the tension mounted. Even deep underground, they all knew there was nowhere left to run. Their unique biosignature was already imprinted in the council's system. It was only a matter of time before they were found and apprehended. "We can't wait for them to find us," Aria said, voice trembling but resolute. "We have to act. If this is the last time, I want everyone on Narvia to know what we fought for." Jax looked at the two women beside him, one gentle and profound, one wild and fierce, and realized he was no longer afraid. He was no longer a foreigner on this world. From this moment on, the three of them were the voice of freedom, the face of a love without boundaries on Narvia. Lyen sat facing Jax, her hand running through his hair, gripping softly as if to memorize this feeling one last time. "If I must be erased from the Syrian genome, I don't regret it, because I've learned what limitless love truly means." Aria drew close, trembling hands gently lifting his shirt, her lips pressing to an old scar along his ribs. "Our bonding has surpassed every traditional definition. They can destroy my body, but they can't sever this flow of feeling." Jax embraced them both, letting every nerve, every heartbeat merge together. This time there was no hesitation. Aria caressed every centimeter of his skin with tenderness, while Lyen's touch was fierce, hungry, searing like fire. Jax poured his instincts into them, lips roaming across shoulders, neck, chest, his hands cherishing every curve, every delicate line, until raw emotion became the only language between them. Outside, patrol engines roared, alarms blared, but deep within the darkness, the three of them curled together, giving everything to every movement. Ecstasy surged like a tsunami, breaking every previous boundary, not only in the flesh but in the mind, where every longing, every fear, every shred of love fused into a single, inseparable entity. Aria whimpered in bliss, Lyen bit her lip to stifle a sob, and Jax could only hold them tighter, every breath like a current electrifying his body, every movement a symphony of endless passion. In that moment, their bonding was no longer an event. It became a new energy, radiating outward, merging with hundreds of signals across the planet. Every sensitive Syrian felt the shift, as if a god of instinct had just awakened. As the peak of feeling faded, flashlight beams swept the walls of their hideout. A loudspeaker boomed. "All of you inside, come out immediately. By order of the Syrian Council, you are to be detained under biocontrol regulations." Jax looked at Aria, then at Lyen. "We're not running anymore. It's time to face them." The three rose, wearing nothing but thin biosuits, eyes blazing in the darkness. Hand in hand, they stepped out of the cave, standing tall as armed control squads pointed weapons at them. At the front stood the Council's supreme officer, her gaze icy yet astonished at the sight of the three. "You have broken genetic law," she declared, her voice trembling, whether from anger or fear even she couldn't say. "This level of bonding threatens the entire Syrian society." Jax stepped forward, refusing to let go of either sister. "You are the ones afraid of your own instincts. We're just the beginning of evolution." Lyen sneered, her eyes provocative. "If this bonding is a crime, then from now on, thousands will be guilty with us." Aria stood firm, meeting the officer's gaze. "Our bonding is a freedom of choice, the kind of choice your old laws will never understand." The council demanded all three be isolated, tested, have their memories erased, and be separated forever. But at that very moment, across Syrian cities, waves of protest erupted, twin pairs and young people pouring into the streets. They bore the new symbol of bonding, generating powerful biosignals, amplifying them to every central sensor. The female officer hesitated, torn between duty and a fear of the uncontrollable. "If we release you, this society will never be the same." Jax smiled, for the first time feeling truly unalone. "That's exactly why we fought." Aria and Lyen squeezed his hands. Their bond flared like a sacred fire, unleashing energy no military device could block. All the bioscanners around them shut down one by one, sensors flickered in chaos, the system buckling under the overload. A wave of resonance rippled across the planet. Twin pairs began embracing in the streets, breaking every prohibition, letting pleasure and love become the common voice of a new generation. Before Jax, Aria, and Lyen, the council's ranks slowly retreated. Some of the younger guards glanced at each other, dropped their weapons, and slipped away. No further words were needed. Jax took both women's hands and climbed out of the cave. The sky above Narvia glowed with a new radiance, the twin moons seeming closer than ever, illuminating a whole generation awakening at once. They didn't know what the future would hold. But amid a sea of people vibrating with the same emotional frequency, Jax knew that from today, they had rewritten the laws of the Syrian race, through love, pleasure, instinct, and the courage to break every barrier. The three of them blended into the throng, wild with joy beneath the twin moons. In the arms of Aria and Lyen, Jax smiled, realizing he was now part of something greater than any dream, and that their story had only just begun. Spring arrived earlier than ever on Narvia. The sky still bore its twin moons, but the long cold nights had given way to glowing forests and strange blossoms overflowing the old paths. In the central square, once reserved for formal rituals and the strict surveillance of the council, there was now camaraderie, laughter, warm embraces, and eyes shining with gratitude and pride. The bonding breakthrough that began with Jax, Aria, and Lyen 3 months earlier had become a milestone in history. After weeks of resistance, the Syrian Council finally surrendered to the unstoppable tide of change. The old laws controlling bonding were abolished. New policies arose. Every individual, twin, foreign, or alien, was now free to choose, connect, and love according to their own instinct. Jax was no longer an outsider on Narvia. Together with Aria and Lyen, he was respected, not for defeating the council, but for daring to live, to love, and to accept the consequences of their choices. The three of them hid away for a short time, but soon re-emerged to join forums, mentor, and advise couples, twins, and anyone seeking to understand the freedom of bonding. One morning, Jax awoke on a round bed draped in silk, the air filled with the fragrance of wildflowers. Aria slept to his left, holding tightly to his arm as if afraid to let go. Lyen on the right nuzzled close, her lips brushing his chest, her warmth and the silent whisper of Syrian love spreading through him. They were no longer afraid of anyone's gaze. In this home, every morning was a new journey, a rebirth, 3 souls woven into one, every dream, every pleasure, and every hope shared without limit. At noon, Jax and the sisters strolled through the square, watching couples, friend groups, and even young twins walking arm in arm, smiling freely in the crowd. Bonding monitors had become nothing more than children's toys, no longer instruments of control or threat. A shy, silver-haired Syrian girl tugged her mother's sleeve and approached Jax. "Are you the one who helped keep my parents together?" Jax knelt, smiling as he patted her head. "Not just me, all of us who dared to love and stand up for freedom." Aria hugged Jax from behind, eyes soft and joyful. Lyen looped around on the right, teasing. Who would have thought 3 outlaws would become the inspiration for an entire planet? Jax laughed, grasping both their hands, feeling that gentle current ripple down his spine. A sensation that only came when soul, instinct, and love merged completely. If it hadn't been us, it would have been someone else, because love, when strong enough, always finds a way. The days that followed unfolded in a new peace. There were nights when Jax and the sisters lay under the twin moons, tangled in endless waves of pleasure, lost in sweet moans and shared warmth. Some afternoons, all 3 would walk hand in hand to the great river, swimming and telling stories of old pain, realizing that all those memories were just the foundation for this fulfilled present. Every time they bonded now, it was different. Not just pleasure, but healing, emotional sharing, and a source of strength for those around them who were still uncertain about their own choices. The story of Jax, Aria, and Lyen spread far beyond Narvia, reaching neighboring planets, where humans and other alien races were learning to break the barriers of prejudice. Conversations about freedom of bonding, about instinct, and about the choice between law and emotion began to appear on interstellar forums everywhere. One night, Jack stood by the window, gazing at the twin moons layered over each other, their gentle light washing the forest. Aria and Lyen approached, each resting their head on his shoulder. No words were needed, but within their minds the bond rang out, no longer just desire but gratitude, a deep thankfulness for fate, for their meeting, for their struggle, and for the freedom they had won. Aria whispered, "Thank you for daring to love me. Without you, we would have remained empty shadows beside each other forever." Lyen poked his chest. "Thanks for breaking the rules with us. Only an earthling could be crazy enough for that." Jax wrapped his arms around them, kissing each deeply. "It wasn't just me. The three of us changed everything together." Outside, joyful music echoed from afar, as if welcoming a new generation on Narvia. Inside, Jax, Aria, and Lyen curled together, letting the world melt away, leaving only 3 hearts, 3 souls, and a happiness they had never known before. And so, the old journey ended and a new era began. An era where love, whether between 3, 4, or beyond all genetic limits, was honored, where every instinct was free, where everyone had the right to choose how to live, love, and connect. There nothing remained but the perfect harmony of humanity and instinct, of love and freedom, like the twin moons over Narvia, forever shining down on those bold enough to love.